In the next set of patch notes scheduled for January 14th, there will be some changes to some of the faction tag bonuses. Here, I'm going to give you a sneak preview of what they are, and we'll discuss as to whether some of them are buffs, nerfs, and also we'll briefly discuss a change to one hero. All right, so before I show you the proposed changes to some of the faction tag bonuses, I do have to emphasize that one of the things that we're told from us, especially when it came to allowing us to preview these set of patch notes, is that this is coming from the community management team. So they are kind of the middleman when it comes to communication between content creators and the developers. So this may change. Right now, they're just allowing us to publish early content on it to kind of get an idea of what the community feel is going to be like, especially for some of the changes that we are going to be highlighting here. I'm going to tell you which factions are being changed, what they're gaining from some of the changes, and then we'll look at it together to see how everything is affected in the game by all the changes that have occurred. All right. Also, I'm going to say that as we look at ArkhamMostWanted and Legion of Doom, we do have to keep in mind that there's also a proposed change to Scarecrow. That I covered in a separate video. That should be published at the same time that this one is. So if you want to go look at the changes to Scarecrow first and then come back to this one, I'm going to make sure that there's a card that comes up where you can click on it and go check that out. Or you can check it out after this one, after you're done with this video. So you can kind of put it all together and then kind of get an idea of how everything is going to play out. So everything is expected to roll out in the 14th, I believe, when they're targeting this. Right, so I made a couple cards here. So here we're going to start with the Justice League. So right now, as it stands, when we deploy 3, 4, 5 heroes from the Justice League, the champion increases their HP by 10%, it's a flat 10%, but then their attack is boosted by 10, 15, 20% respectively. How they're changing this? Well, now if you deploy 3, 4, or 5 Justice League members, you're going to get a little bit of a boost in terms of HP. So this will increase 10, 20, 30% respectively. And the attack also is getting a little bit of a boost. We're going to get 10, 20, 30%. So the more Justice League members we bring in, we get a little bit of attack gain. So this is all just in regards to this particular faction. The DPSs, there isn't one that is really a robust DPS, except unless you count Superman, but he's single target hitter. Attack can definitely benefit a lot of the support heroes in that faction, and the increased HP is going to be welcome, especially for the front units. All right, we'll come back to that, but let's look at the Batman family, because this is how this is going to be changed. So for the Batman family, previously, if you deployed 3, 4, 5 Bat family members, then we were gaining crit rate 15, 18, and 24%. Now it's going to change. So the less Batman family we deploy, we're still going to get crit rate, but it's not as much as we previously did. It's only going to be 8%, 16% if we do 4, 24% if we do 5. All right, but we're gaining something. We're gaining dodge. So dodge is going to give us the ability to avoid physical damage, right? It doesn't avoid spiritual damage, but at least we have another measure to try to make sure that if we encounter any type of physical damage dealers, that we can at least survive a little bit longer by possibly dodging, or just they completely miss that's the attack, that skill that they're trying to put on you. So this will be at 18, 16, 24% respectively, based on the number of Batman family heroes that you deploy into the battlefield. All right, so now here's the change to the ArkhamMostWanted faction. Right now, as we deploy in 3, 4, or 5 ArkhamMostWanted champions, increases their effect accuracy, right? Up to 30%, and then their HP is also increased 10, 12, 15%. Now this is going to change, because now they're going to remove the effect accuracy. We're still going to get the HP. We get a little bit of a boost from that, so it's going to be 10, 20, 30%. But now instead of effect accurate, we're going to gain continuous damage over time, or DOT. So this will be 8%, 16%, and then 24%. So again, this will boost the likes of Joker, Nurse Harley. That's an example, because they actually are doing damage over time. Okay, Legion of Doom. So right now, based on the number of heroes that we are deploying, anywhere between 3 and 5, we gain energy restoration speed from it. So if we bring in 5 of them, we're getting 30%. So this is just all our alts activating very, very quickly. So now this is going to change by the increasing the energy gain, same 10, 20, 30%, but also now we're going to get a little bit of a damage boost. So it's going to be 10, 20, 30% based on how many Legion of Doom heroes we have for 10 seconds at the start of the battle. So this is exactly how they're behaving, right? They're supposed to be that burst type of composition, especially if you early late game. They're meant to just go fast and bring everything down. They're not meant to sustain. So we're getting an additional damage from the faction tag here, up to 30% if we get 5. All right, now let me bring you to the Teen Titans, because this one is going to be significant. This one, we were getting crit damage based on the number of Teen Titans heroes that we were bringing onto the field. So if we brought 5 of them, we were getting 45% extra crit damage if we did crit on our hits. Well, now this is going to change. So now, based on the number of heroes that we're deploying, we're getting physical damage dealt, and we're also getting a spiritual defense. All right. So if we bring 5 Teen Titans into the field, we're going to get the physical damage boost. We're going to get the spiritual defense boost. But here's the neat thing. The more buffs they have on them. So if we bring in support units that can put buffs on our heroes, especially our damage dealer, Nightwing, he is going to get boosted on that physical damage that he can deal up to 45% based on the number of buffs that we can put, whether it's coming for, my understanding is whether it's coming from another hero's kit or it's coming from the legacy piece that they have equipped on them. All right. And also the spiritual defense can stack up by 30, 60, and 90%. So the base, essentially what we're looking at here is that this faction is getting tweaked a little bit to deal with spiritual damage dealing composition. All right, now let's go to the Justice League Dark. So as it stands right now, based on the number of heroes that we were deploying, we're getting spiritual amplification. So if we write in 3, we got 20%. If we bring in 5, we get 30%. That is big, especially because it boosts Constantine. Well, they're changing this. They're removing the spiritual amplification, and now what they're giving us is a shield. So first, we are going to gain shield strength by 5, 20, or 45% based on the number of Justice League Dark members that we deploy. And at the start of the battle, they will immediately gain a fixed shield equal to 20% of their max HP for 15 seconds. So this is essentially the way that they're looking at this is that they know that for some of these units, it takes a while for them to build their ultimate. So for example, Fate, and we put him in the 1 slot. He sometimes is very vulnerable to attacks, especially from somebody like Sinestro. He can get taken out if there is a very good Sinestro build. So this is just a way to give him that initial shield, hopefully survive to that ultimate, and then he can provide his shields as well. Maybe even provide some survivability to the backline, such as Raven, Satana, and Constantine, while then Fate protects him in some way. If we have Swamp Thing, we can knock, and we have the legacy piece, we can at least reduce the attack for a while and the energy gain of the opponent. So the way that they're really changing this to try to compensate and, according to them, balance out Justice League Dark is to remove the spiritual amplification. And now they are also giving us the opportunity to gain the stat back with other features that they have introduced in the game. But that's where pretty much Justice League Dark stands right now. And last but not least, DeathMetals are going to be changed as well. Right now, because we only have DeathMetal Wonder Woman, we this champion is deployed, gonna gain 20% damage reduction at the start, and then it flips, right? Every 10 seconds it flips. So then they gain 20% increased damage, and that rotates during the battle. Now they're going to change it, and this is this here is the pay to win change when it comes to this overall hold that they're doing. Here now they're saying we're deploying 1, 2, 3 DeathMetal heroes. So hey, hint, more of this crap is coming, right? So we're gonna get some more DeathMetal heroes added to the faction. We're going to get reduced damage to all allies, not just the DeathMetal. You plop a DeathMetal hero into the composition, now everybody benefits. So all allies will take less damage, 12, 16, and 20%. And then increases all allies' damage dealt by 12, 16, 20% based on how many DeathMetal heroes you have in the composition. And that is how this one is changing. All right, so now let's talk about the overall impact as it pertains to everything that we've seen so far. All right, so number one, this one's a standalone. This one, there's no question in my mind that this is for the pay-to-win players and to entice to further pursue the other DeathMetal heroes that are coming into the game. So there's nothing more to say on that one. It's just going to be a big boost in terms of PvP. So under the stance, as we were told, that this is to balance out PvP, this here does not balance it. This is clearly giving one faction an advantage, especially if you add more heroes into it. All right, now let me go back to Justice League. This one here might not look significant on the surface because we're just gaining HP and attack, but you got to think about the roster that we're dealing with here and who is in the faction. One of them happens to be Martian Manhunter. Given all the other changes that have occurred, especially as it pertains to Justice League Dark, I think that the consensus might be that Martian Manhunter, because of the counterattack that he can give, that he will gain a boost. And down the line, if there are more outsiders that come in and then they get that boost on the counterattack damage, then we're going to probably see Martian Manhunter benefit a little bit more from this change. But I'll be interested to see what you actually guys think about the overall change here for Justice League. BatFam is the one that is really interesting because of the dodge mechanic. It's just trying to avoid the physical damage that is coming from other factions, right? So we will have to see how exactly this affects their durability, and that if this is going to make them stand in battle a little bit longer, which is, I think, is what some of these changes might be driven to, is just try to extend that battle, sustain it a little bit more. But the downside is that we're losing crit rate. So there is less of a chance for us to crit and do additional damage. So we'll see how that pans out. Now, when it comes to ArkhamMostWanted, Joker, Nurse Harley, as I said, they will definitely benefit. We have all the other heroes that are going to get boosted as well from this. We're getting more HP, so Bane might survive a little bit longer. And now we're also going to have to add in Scarecrow, but do remember that we are under the premise that the Scarecrow rework is going to be part of this patch. He has been changed from being a spiritual damage tank to a physical damage tank. So now this, at least on the surface, it might look like the change will definitely impact ArkhamMostWanted to give him a little bit of buff. I'm going to say net gain. But here's the thing. When it comes to the Scarecrow change, that completely changes the dynamic of the faction. That I'm going to call it a nerf, all right? So if they were hoping for us to extend ArkhamMostWanted and bringing into a PvP scenario, which is what they're doing here, they're trying to balance out PvP. No, I do not think that ArkhamMostWanted is going to be an effective composition unless you're dealing with red stars or something that is just so evolved that it can really possibly counter anything that they run across, whereas in the blues and purple stars. then they probably see a benefit there. All right. Here is the other thing too that I'm going to bring up. This fellow behind me here, Penguin. He's the one that kind of gets left on the dust here, because this guy used to do damage over time, not anymore. And really, nothing in here is going to benefit him all. So this guy here needs a buff. When it comes to the Legion of Doom, because of the change to Scarecrow, even getting that initial damage boost that they're giving us, think about how the battle rolls out, right? What their mechanic is they gain the speed, they activate their ults, they go. One of the benefits that they had was having Scarecrow on the front. And if you could boost this ult to then apply the mental breakdown and kind of lock things up and give somebody like Deathstroke and Sinestro the opportunity to start bringing stuff down without them getting hit or getting affected by anything from the other composition, then they were an advantage. Now the brief change, now this change that Scarecrow is undergoing, where not only did they remove that focus attack from his kit, where everything would be focused on him, but also they removed mental breakdown. And the only way that you're going to be able to get that back is by purchasing that legacy piece. And if you don't evolve that legacy piece, then it becomes RNG. You're not going to be guaranteed 100% until you get it all the way to red. So because of that, even here, what appears to be on paper to be a slight boost to the damage that Legion of Doom is dealing, because of the change of Scarecrow, I'm going to call this a possible effect of nerfing LOD, especially at the early game, given the sequence of the bleed counters. Because initially we had Superman, Joker, and then we could bring in, down the line, we come in Scarecrow with Sinestro and Deathstroke, right? And so people then focus, at least in the early game, to try, if they were really interested in PvP, to do the Legion of Doom. Well, this kind of pulls it back a little bit and kind of gives an advantage to other of the factions to try to balance that out. That's the way that I will look at this. End gamers probably are also not going to be happy about it, especially because of the change to Scarecrow. So we already had a significant change when it came to somebody like Satana in terms of countering Deathstroke. So this one definitely is going to put Legion of Doom a little bit on the back burner. But if you're looking at it as a whole, to the whole faction, just without Scarecrow's changing, and you're just analyzing everything, this is significant. This is going to be a slight buff because of the extra damage that they're dealing. But that's it. Overall, in terms of the PvP meta, I think LOD is going to suffer a little bit. All right, let me go here to Teen Titans, because the one guy that I wanted to bring here is Nightwing. All right, so we're removing all that crit damage. Now, this is all me postulating because I haven't had a chance to test this. It's not available, at least in the test server, for us to be able to really analyze this. So we're going to have to see, or we're going to have to find out how critical the crit damage that we're losing is to Nightwing. Based on the changes here, because we need to bring in buffs to be able to then push Nightwing to be able to deal physical damage, I believe that based on the composition that you're putting around him, that you could possibly lose some value, especially in prolonged battles. And again, like I said, one of the things that I'm trying to see if these changes are being driven towards is to extend the battles and make sure that they're not just boom, boom, quick, right? So we will have to see how exactly it changes Nightwing. Right now, I'm gonna be optimistic that it doesn't really affect him that whole much, especially if we're able to buff him. But I do think like something that if you were relying on him for something like the comeback cycle, I think you're going to see a little bit of reduction from that, because at least in the previous, if you crit, you got some additional damage, especially from the crit damage, and then you were able to boost that by bringing other heroes alongside. So we should see exactly how this one here pertains, but this is the one that I would say I would worry about. Here's the other thing though. This faction is being changed now to be the counter to spiritual damage dealers. All right. So this is going to be the whole adjustment of balancing things out to try to see if the Teen Titans, and maybe with something like Starfire, bringing other heroes into the fold, into this faction, that then it will allow for, in the PvP environment, something to counter Justice League Dark, for example, who is really saw a rise because of Swamp Thing and everything else that has been recently introduced into the game. So we shall see how that really changes for Nightwing. If he's just part of a BatFam, if we go back, he's just gaining dodge. So that is definitely something else that we're going to have to keep in mind here, because if we use them as a BatFamily member, we were only gaining that crit rate, and then if we were able to do a hybrid, we were getting crit rate and crit damage. And now he has the opportunity to get spiritual defense and get dodge. So it might make him a menace a little bit for something like Justice League Dark, but we do have to remember that this faction here, at least early on, besides losing the spiritual damage, early on they're going to get that shield. So it's all about trying to get past that initial shield and make sure that then Fate or somebody else doesn't save him on the back end. Or if you are bringing Queen Hippolyta in to try to get him shields and then use that faction tag bonus by strengthening the shields, that you're going to have to bypass that. So those are just examples here that we're bringing into the fold. Now, when it comes to Justice League Dark, really, the hero that is being affected the most here is going to be John Constantine, because he's losing that spiritual amplification that the faction tag allowed him to have. And I think that, again, this is a way for them to kind of knock that back a little bit, especially the effect that he was having here in the PvP meta. And so in turn, they're just going to give you the ability to possibly have him survive a little bit longer and maybe build up to that ultimate. But we're definitely going to have to try to get spiritual amplification stats now, additional ones, from not only transmutations, but also from courtships, for example. And I think that that is the only way that we're going to possibly be able to make some of this 30% here. But definitely here, he is one of the losers. Now, one of the winners that might come out of this might be Dr. Fate, because again, he gets that shield early on, and then he has the opportunity to then activate his shields and then save the composition around him. But yeah, it is disappointing that Justice League, after, at least in my server, we had runs of Constantine and Satana consecutively as the bleed counter flip, and then Swamp Thing was introduced. So as that meta change and Justice League Dark was becoming the more predominant one, now they're knocking it all back in the name of balance. So that's where we stand there. So that's essentially how I'm looking at this whole globally with all the changes here. So let me know, what do you think about these changes? This is going to be an opportunity to provide some of this feedback, because remember, this is not all finalized. This is just them allowing us to preview this and kind of give us our thought, especially as to how we would see this changing the PvP meta as it stands right now. I would say that some of the factions were weakened, some were strengthening. So if they were definitely looking for a balance, they might have found it with some of these changes, but some of this will need to be tested out. We will have to definitely see what the impact is on heroes like Nightwing and John Constantine. But we do know that whatever balance they're trying to introduce, they're going to definitely throw it out the window when all the DeathMetal characters come into play and we start forming compositions with them included. So that's it. Those are the factions that are getting some type of change, and hopefully down the line we'll see other factions getting a little bit of a boost, especially with possibly new characters coming into the game. Because come on, hey, bird of praise, they need a little bit of love. Let's try to bring them into the fold here in DC Dark Legion as well. So that's all for this video. Again, let's talk about it. Let's debate it in the comment section, just to see what you guys think about the changes that are being introduced. This is just another one of those big changes that we have come accustomed to here in the last couple of months. Let's just see how this one eventually will play out. But definitely some pluses, some minuses. There will definitely have some winners and losers in this whole thing. Thank you all very much for tuning in and watching. I will see you all in the next DC Dark Legion video.